For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, both now and ever and unto the ages of ages. Okay, so I want you to know that you probably know this already, because you guys are really savvy, that the Liturgicon, you know, which is a derivative from the Mega Epchologion, as we said in this class, it's a good cheat sheet, and it's made in such a way that it's a good cheat sheet for deacons and priests. And deacons are in charge of not only making sure that the gospel is ready for the priest. In other words, again, master of ceremonies. I mean, look, when Pandalemon Papadopoulos, who was at the archdeacon for Archbishop Demetrius, used to come. We all used to shudder because he was putting everything in order, and he was making sure that and about this thing about rank and everything. I mean, you saw those little drawings I made. Don't think I did them this week. I did them for my teleliturgics class, but I think they help to see how. Look how the deacon's he's at the peak. He's at the peak. Okay. And also, I want to emphasize this idea that you really figured it out, of the centrality of Christ in our worship, and the centrality of this notion of the presence and reality of Christ in our midst, in every aspect of the liturgy. And that's why it's basically made up of these two parts. And when I said the first, I didn't really elaborate upon my point that the first part is based on synagogue worship. That's what synagogue worship was. It was a reading of scripture and then an explication, an explanation of scripture. So just like Christ, that's the way he began his ministry. If you remember, when he was in his home village, Nazareth, and he opened the book and said that these things are, and he read a prophecy from Isaiah, and he said, well, these things are fulfilled in your sight. And then people got mad at him and said, who do you think you are? The son of the carpenter, See, we expect God to be coming out of something like a big Zeus kind of fantastic thing, like a guy with a lightning bolt. And if we see him as humble, it's difficult to swallow. And again, that's the absolute I think beauty and profundity of Christianity, that God is so great that he becomes small for us. He transcends even his greatness and becomes small for us. He looks at us from below. Unbelievable. Who can talk about a God like that? That for the pagans and for the ancient world, that was beneath the dignity of a God that's worthy of our respect, right? Because they had the model of the Roman emperor, who is whatever he felt like would happen. He could sacrifice people, he could just get rid of anything. And God, who made us, and we, compared to God, we're like a little ant, we're like a little speck. But he respects us so much that he stoops down to our level and even goes below us. Okay? Anyway, it's just too much. So I get really emotional during Holy Week and Holy Week seminar when I do a Holy Week seminar for the students. And sometimes it's just too much, But anyway, that's the God we have. Thank God. Okay, my good people. And any questions? Okay, you saw the rubrics. You saw, what was going on in the different liturgies that I had. I had a little bit of Christodolos. I had a little bit of Ignatius from Volos. He's a really fantastic guy, really an inspired bishop. And I made that basic background outline of the Divine Liturgy. And did you understand what I was saying? That basically, in the time of Chrysostom, it would basically be the entrance of all the people. And that's what we call the small entrance today. And immediately, the clergy and all the people would walk into the nave, and they had a special, a special apparatus called, and some of you really enlightened me because I'm very happy, because I'm interested in writing a paper on the Ambon, and my what's the word? This thing that's puzzling me, the thing that is a mystery I cannot solve is, look, all of the ancient churches, in other words, pre-Justinian and some even Middle Byzantine churches, they all had a permanent feature, was this ambon in the middle. And why is it that all I can find is, why is it that all I can find is like one Amvon in Calabaca near George the Foolis's village? How do you like that for size? Have you seen that? Have you been there? Have you seen the Amvon? Next time you go, check it out. And then in Xilocastro, I heard from one of my students that in Xilocastro, some priest built a modern church. It's not an old church, and it has a real Amvon in the middle. And that also, who was it? Mr. Rigas, the good man. He showed me the church from St. Andrew in Patras. I didn't know that it has a real Amvon. It's not really that high, but still, they read from the middle, huh? John, is that true? They read the scriptures from that point? Do they know what to do with it? Because in Calabaca, they have it fenced off, George. They don't know what's going on. They're like, what is this thing? They've forgotten the use of it. They've forgotten their own tradition. You are tradition. Yeah, Fandas.
Father, that is
in
true.
In Manavasia, there are several churches that have the Amvon, but they don't use them for what they used to use them for.
Wait a second. I rented a little cottage with my family, with my wife and my kid there, and I searched all the churches. I couldn't find any. Show me. Tell me which ones.
So there's one in the new town, not where Old Town is out on the island, but in the new town there's one in their main church facility there. We went there for the feast day of that church.
Is it actually an ancient church, or they built a modern
They built one in there.
Oh,
it's a modern church.
They're trying to be cool, huh? They're trying to imitate the past.
But one of the old churches on Manavasia that where all those cannonballs are out in the middle of the square, it's just to the left of that, and there's an Amvon in there.
Do you remember the name of that?
No, I don't. Well, there's just so many churches on that little tiny island.
Because I raided that little island, and I searched everything. I never found one.
Yeah,
I went to Hagia Sophia. You know Hagia Sophia, the octagonal church up there that's trying to imitate Hagia Sophia. It's a beautiful church. I love it. But I could not find any Amvons.
Yeah.
Well, so you're saying in the Platea where the cannonballs are?
Yeah, correct.
Like a small church, but is it actually a Byzantine church, or is it a new church?
No, it's an old church that's off to basically, if you're standing there, it's off to the left and behind you a little bit from where those cannons are.
So Jansen Hills, I can't believe it. This is a fairy tale land. If you ever want to go to a special place like it's like a paramithi, it's like a fairy tale. It's like going back to Byzantium, Manavasia. It's a rock that has a little bridge from the mainland, and it's basically a Byzantine town that is retained to this day. And because it was a little fortified rock, the Turks couldn't get at them, and so the Byzantine way survived longer, put it this way, and it has a lot of beautiful churches. But
when we were there, we were fortunate enough to have a service up at the church on the very top of the mountain too.
You mean Hagia Sophia?
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Up on top of Manavasia. Yep.
Wow.
And it was. I mean, the frescoes are beautiful, and everything was. It was great. It was a good time.
All right. Do you have background from that area?
No, we just decided to go to Greece and went down there, and from there we went to like Sparti, to a bunch of different monasteries up there, and just all over the place. We had a good time.
It's a totally magical area. Also, Manavasia, but there's also Mistra. One has to go visit. Yeah. Awesome.
Father, that's the one where they're built on the hill, correct?
Exactly.
On the hill, and there's a castle at the top. We went there with. We had a guide with us from it's a brother-in-law of one of the guys that went with us, and he came down from I can't remember someplace up near there, and he came down and he introduced us to one of the soon-to-be bishops from there, and he took us on a tour of all that, and we saw the monastery with the nuns there on Mistras, and yeah, it was a good time.
You're a lucky man. In Greece, it's all about connections. You know why? It's our theology of the person. It's not the law. It's not these impersonal things that matter. But did you comb your hair the right way? Do you know how to talk? And you have connections. You have people. In other words, it's all about personal connection. Why? Because God is first of all a person. He's not this abstract, impersonal essence. Because in the West, there's a tendency sometimes to answer the question of who's the one God and say, well, it's the one essence. Well, humanity for me is not human nature. That's something abstract. Humanity for me is Mr. Rijas looking at me and smiling at me. Okay, and George too, and Jordan and Leo Davis and Benson and all these people, great people. Oh, I love it. And Mr.
Father,
and Jim Keown's beard. I look at his beard and I'm happy.
Father, regarding the church in Patras, the old St. Andrew's Church, the tour guide that was giving a tour that day did refer to the that structure as an ambon.
Yeah, but it's sort of in the middle, but it's kind of low. But of course, that church is obviously not a Byzantine church; it's a modern church. But it's interesting.
No, it's a yes, it is a modern church. It's a basilica, and then they have the new St. Andrew's Church, which is arguably the largest Greek Orthodox church in all of Greece, right next to it. So they have the old church and the new church. And this is the picture I sent you is from the old church.
That's great.
And I don't know when it was built.
Okay, I'm going to try to find out. I'm very interested in that. By the way, I search for these kind of things, so thank you very much for enlightening me. There's another church near Corinthos, Lecheon. Lecheon was the ancient port, and this church, it's in ruins, but sometimes the Greeks don't even know what they have. It's like it's in barbed wire, and they're not taking advantage of it and using it to show. This is it's like a football field. I mean, it's like very, very long. And, I went in through, there's a hole in the fence. And so I went in through the hole and everything. But really, there's some fantastic treasures in Greece. Anyway, I see some chat here coming up. So during the Divine Liturgy, John Rigas, the king, that name means king. You know that, right? John Rigas, the king, during the Divine Liturgy, at the small entrance, it is expected for the deacon to cense the priests as they enter the altar if there are 2 or more priests celebrating the liturgy. So, so I don't think so because, first of all, if you only have a deacon and a priest, the deacon's holding the gospel. He doesn't have the censer. So that's really more Vespers. In Vespers, the job of the deacon at that entrance is to hold the censer unless there's going to be a gospel read in that Vespers, as we learned earlier. And therefore, at that point, in the Great Vespers, yes, the job of the deacon is to indeed sense everyone as they walk in. So looking at the videos that we had, I don't think, I would say that that's more of a Vespers thing. Okay.
But Father, it's after you enter in and place the gospel book on the altar table. This service book here is mentions that as far as if there are 2 or more priests, you would grab the censer from an acolyte priest as they come in.
Okay, great.
So
if it says that, I want you to know that every book's going to be slightly different, and there are many rubrics and many. In other words, there's not one set thing; it's a living thing. And that world famous book that you showed us, that must be, it must have come straight from God, I'm sure, right? What is it?
Well, it came from Holy Cross, and you teach there.
If it comes from Holy Cross, that means it has the imprimatur of the Pope and also the Patriarch and the whole world. You know what I tell my students? Anyone and his monkey's uncle can write a liturgical book and sell it at Holy Cross, and because it is sold at Holy Cross, people assume that it's approved by the whole church, the universal church. But I have news for you: anyone can write a book and sell it at Holy Cross. So it doesn't mean anything, but that book might be very good. But again, look, I've been doing this for many years, and I'm teaching teleliturgics, where I always end up looking at like 4 or 5 different liturgicons, or ephrologia basically, and they all have something slightly different. And every time you go to a different liturgy, the practices are slightly different. And that's not bad, that's good, because it's not about conforming to one norm. Because in the early church and the early liturgy and the development of liturgy, there was a legitimate variety, because in the Holy Trinity itself, there is variety, right? In other words, there is diversity in unity, and therefore there were many liturgies that were legitimate liturgies. Okay, not only Saint Chrysostom, Saint Basil. In the early church, in the early Byzantine Empire, every region had its own different liturgical family. I mean, there was a Coptic family, there was an Antiochian family, there was East Syrian, West Syrian, all these things were legitimate and part of the one church. Okay, in the end, the Byzantine Rite, the rite of the city of Constantinople, took over. Why? Not because it was forced on anyone, but just because of historical vicissitudes, as it were. In other words, things just developed that way, and basically the main reason is because of the Muslims, because they took over all those lands, and those very legitimate and very beautiful Orthodox pro-Chalcedonian, Chalcedonian, put it this way. In other words, together with the Fourth Ecumenical Council, those liturgies eventually died away, at least for the pro-Chalcedonians, because of the Muslims and because of the bishops in those regions were in exile. And where'd they go? They went to Constantinople, and some of them lived their whole life there. And so they forgot their own traditions. So it was not something like, oh, the Constantinopolitans wanted to impose the liturgy of their city. No. The idea always was that there is a legitimate variety. So legitimate variety, the legitimacy of variety is also proven in the fact that there will be different rubrics. So what I try to do in my classes and in this program is basically try to look at what is the sort of norm, okay? And knowing that there's going to be variety, because look, those drawings I made with the the entrances and everything, it seems like everyone's doing it slightly differently. Nothing is really set in stone. Okay. All right. Mark Bradshaw, to everyone. Father, I couldn't help but laugh. In your notes, in the pre-communion section, instead of "for the precious gifts here presented," you wrote "for the precious gits." Now, a git, being a worthless, foolish person, and we all certainly are, I thought that was very appropriate. Maybe we should just adjust the prayers. Well, that's good. I didn't know that. So I didn't, boy, yes, you're right, gits. I got the gits here. Okay. Well, look, guys, full-time parish, I don't get much sleep, and I'm constantly saying I have to give the best I can for these students because they're good. They're really on the ball. Boy, I don't want to disappoint them. So I ended up, like sleeping, with my head on my computer. Tinas po. Anyway, next, Jim Keown, the good man. I talked to my father this morning about the equality between deacon and priest. After he was done laughing, he told me to look up canon. Okay, I mean, look, the point is this. Canon 18 probably of the Quinisext or some other. I teach canon law, and I know there are those canons. But so the point is that it's a long story, and we cannot kind of like say, quote canons as if we're quoting scripture. In other words, you're going to say canons are part of our tradition. Yeah, they're guidelines, but we don't know the history. In other words, they always were pastorally connected. In other words, it could have been that the deacons were too bossy. Okay, and then that's why that canon was written. But you look at the liturgical text and you look at the old tradition and you look at St. Paul. In other words, everything we do has to be, especially when we're talking about canons, we cannot have canons as an objective law above our heads. Our law is relationship with Christ, and therefore everything we do in the church, and when we talk about canons, because canons have a lot of funny language. By the way, you're all excommunicated anyway. Why doesn't your father laugh about that? What is he using a spoon for? Why doesn't he follow the canons? Huh? Tell him to read Canon 101 of Quinisext, and then we'll talk. All right? Anyway, the point is this. I'm being funny. I'm not being, disrespectful to your father. I'm sorry. I'm sure your father has a longer beard than you, and that he's even more holy than you. I'm sure. So, what is he, a priest or something? Is he a deacon? What is he?
He's a priest.
Okay. Well, tell him not to worship the canons. Tell him to worship Christ. That's all. That's what I tell my students in my canon law class. I teach canon law. So you have to compare those canons always to what? The gauge is the gospel, the good news of Christ. And what? Our theology. In other words, what the ecumenical councils say, right? Because you're going to find other canons that seem to be countering what I'm talking about, anthropology and women and men and the Turkish occupation and all these kind of things. You're gonna quote me other canons, but I'm going to tell you, look, honey bunch, I had to put that in there again. Compare them to what is our anthropology that is based on the Fourth Ecumenical Council, that we are the body of Christ, and in Christ we have the full union in one prosopon, in one hypostasis of the divine and the human, but unconfusedly and indivisibly, yet unconfusedly. Anyway, that's something to think about. So don't throw cannons at me, Mr. Keon.
One of your students.
Huh? Don't unmute yourself. I want to hear what you have to tell me.
I am one of you.
Huh? Oh, okay. Tell your father I love him. Tell your father he's the best. Okay. Dino Bardosas to everyone. I noticed that the first deacon for Bishop Elpiloforos still had his orarion crossed over after communion was offered. I thought that the orarion is changed back after the deacon receives communion. I just wonder if he had a reason for not doing so. No, he was too busy. That's why. So many things on the mind of these poor deacons. They're MCs. You see what they're doing? They have to make sure everything is in place. Okay. Danilo, the good Danilo, Serbian man, has made me happy because he compared me to an angry Father Hopko. That's a better, there's no better compliment for me. I love Father Hopko, and if he tells me even that I'm an angry Father Hopko, then I've been fulfilled in life. I don't need anything else. So God bless you. Thanks for making my day. In the Serbian and Russian jurisdictions, the Beatitudes are recited as part of the third antiphon. Aegis offers that text in variable parts of the Divine Liturgy. Can you please comment on the differences in practice between jurisdictions? Everyone is allowed to, it's not a Serbian or Russian thing. It's just that Serbians and Russians are more conservative and they love monastic practices. So there are two versions of the antiphons. In other words, the replacement for the antiphon, normal cathedral antiphons, are the typica, which are, again, it's the first part of this whole big service, which actually is a what? It's a lay pre-sanctified, okay? The first part, though, is composed of Psalms 102, 145, and the Beatitudes. So instead of the first three antiphons, you can replace them with those three, the chanting of those three items. And it's really beautiful if you hear the music and everything. And so there's no rule. You can, anytime it's a Lego. Remember I said that before, the points in the liturgy before the divine liturgy, before the small entrance, are actually a Lego, because it's not really the beginning of liturgy yet. So you can put a Vespers in there. You can pop a Vespers on there. You can tack antiphons on there. You want to tack the typica, tack the typica. In other words, when I say typica, I mean just the first part of typica, because it's a long service, like I said before. In other words, the apparatus that has those three, that tripartite kind of like structure of Psalm 102, 145, and the Beatitudes. Yes, indeed. So you're free to do it, and I've done them. I've done them in my parish. I don't know if George the Foolish remembers, but we did it. We have done the Typica. Okay, Dino Bardosas to everyone. Also, you are a good artist. Nice beard drawings. Yeah. So I know that people in the Orthodox Church worship hair. Okay, because I just look at Jim Keown, and I know that this is a fact. So I make sure that the hair is really good, because so I have they all had a good head of hair, didn't they? But also the beard has to be awesome. Otherwise, you're not Orthodox. Forget it. Okay. So I made sure that was a part of my drawings. Yes. Adrian's iPhone to everyone. Father, why do some traditions do something different for the third antiphon? I've noticed Greeks do the Apolotikon. Priests from other traditions, graduates from St. Vladimir's or Bulgarian priests, tend to do the Beatitudes for the third antiphon. Can you please comment? Okay, what are they doing for the first two antiphons, though? Where is Adrian? Can you answer that question?
Well, the first antiphon, well, it's the usual one. That's through the prayers of the.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can answer your question now. I know what happened. Here's the thing. What we really do today, what we call antiphons, they're a hybrid. They're not really antiphons, because the verses are taken from the Psalms of the Typica. So it's what do you call it? Like a compromise, because here's the thing. In the ancient the ancient, let's say, antiphons would change according to season or feast, but also the standard would be, I believe, Psalms 91, 92, and 94, okay, for the first, second, and third antiphons, okay? And it would be verses, and then, tes presbyteros, tes theotokos. Actually, the second antiphon wouldn't be, soson imas. It would be presbyteros ton Agion su soson imas. Through the prayers of our saints, save us. And then the third antiphon was soson imas, okay? And that's why a remnant of that is, when we do our entrance hymn, the refrain is always soson imas, save us, O Son of God, resurrected from the dead, whatever. Do you notice that? Okay, that's a remnant of the old form. In any case, to make a long story short, the standard for most of the year was, 91, 92, and 94. And then what ended up happening was the tipika started in monasteries, ended up spreading as it's kind of like an alternate, a fancy alternate. And then eventually, when it spread to the parishes, it was seen as kind of like a special thing to do on an important feast day. So the normal antiphons, 91, 92, and 94, ended up becoming like for the everyday, no ho-hum kind of a non-festal situation, okay? Because monks ended up doing liturgies every day. In other words, in the ancient church, you do a liturgy when there's a feast. But then eventually, because monks ended up having this habit of, doing liturgy every day, I don't want to say that familiarity breeds contempt, but the thing is that it became the normal daily liturgy became not so special as Sunday. So distinguish between them, they would do the tipika on Sundays and the so-called normal, which were the standard for feasts and for non-feasts, as it were, okay, and antiphons for weekdays, put it this way. And so what ended up happening was it spread to the parishes, and on special days, they would do tipika. On normal days, they would do the normal antiphons. But that was too much for the parishes. So what they ended up doing is they made a smorgasbord. They took a selection of, in the form, the same kind of like form, or how do you say, structure of the antiphons. They would take verses from Psalms 102 for the first, from 145 for the second, and then for the third, they would simply do the normal Greek practice, which is the apolitikia. So really what we have is those verses are taken from the verses of the Psalms of the tipika, and then on a so-called daily liturgy, a normal kind of day, they would use the old standard, which was a standard for feasts also, right? 91, 92, 94. So because of this kind of like hybrid situation, some churches, since they've already for the first antiphon and the second antiphon, they're using psalms from the Tipika anyway, some of them would do the third antiphon using the Beatitudes, okay? So it makes sense because really it's a hybrid anyway. When when there's a feast and they're using, like the Greeks, that's what we do. We distinguish between antiphons for a special feast like a Sunday, or St. George, St. Demetrius, and a ho-hum kind of a day. They're just doing a liturgy for the heck of it. Okay, so does that answer the question? Good. Okay. Okay, the king again. John the king, John Regas, to everyone. Is it proper to exit through the royal gate to go out and to read petitions, or was it done this way on the Holy Cross? Okay, so the Fortis might have some different practices, but I know for a fact that the final petition that the deacon does, after everything's done, and what am I talking about? I'm talking about, the litany of thanksgiving. Arise, having partaken, let us worthily give thanks to the Lord, right? That traditionally in patriarchate practice, the deacon faces the people, and he's at the beautiful gate, and he doesn't even have to exit, in other words. So I know that Epilephoros, so again, nothing's written in stone, okay? So you're going to find slightly different rubrics and slightly different books and different practices depending on where the people are coming from, okay? So he's going to give whatever he's used to, and he's going to have that as the standard, Okay, so he was on the island of Halki, okay? And whatever he did there, that is going to become the standard for the United States. That's just the way it works, okay? Okay, David Schreiber, to everyone. Can you discuss how the Liturgicon, Mineon, Pentecostarion, etc. all work together? I know the Ages app does all this for you to build the services, but how do you build the services?
Where do you
How
start?
do you do it from scratch from the books? Well,
Yeah,
you have to.
how do you do it without the app? Because the app is telling you where the source is coming from. Do you start with the Typicon? Where do you start to lay out the?
Yeah. So here's the thing. There are rules. In other words, people who do this all the time, it becomes second nature. They don't even think about it. They might be able to walk cold on the chanter stand and just do it. And the reason for this is because you just look at the services and this is the way it works. The rule is as follows. The Pentecost, the Parakletiki, okay? The Parakletiki is always going to have the full service, and it's the default service. Put it this way, and the Parakletiki is equal to there's the purpose of the Parakletiki fulfills the purpose that also is fulfilled by the Theology and the Pentecostarion. So let's say that, we could talk more about that because on Sundays during Lent, Parakletiki is still used because that's resurrectional. But in any case, the purpose of Parakletiki, Parakletiki, Triodion, Pentecostarion is basically the same, okay? They're connected with something that's movable, as it were. But the point is this. It's the default service is that whatever's in the Mineon, whatever's available in the Mineon will be used. If it's there, you use it. If it's not there, you always fall back on the default, okay? And there are rules given in the Violakis Typicon as to how many, let's say, stichira you're going to be chanting at a Vespers, okay? Or how you're going to do the canon. And most parishes don't even do the canon, so I'm surprised that you guys are so educated and you really understand things where you really understand about the canon and everything, okay? But in any case, there are rules for that. In other words, you're going to do the canon from the Oktoichos Parakletiki first, and then 2, actually, according to the rules, and then for each ode, and then 1 from the Mineon. But if the Mineon has 2 saints and it has 2 high canons, then you do 1 from the Oktoichos first, and then 2 from the saints. Okay, so all these rules are written down. So basically, you know the rules, and you know that the Parakletiki is the Oktoichos, same thing, it's a synonym, right? Is the standard, okay? You build on that. You have that, and then, but you look at the Mineon for the day, and whatever's there, available, you use. And whatever's not there, you fall back on the default, which is the foundation, which is the Parakletiki. It's very easy in that sense, okay? I don't know if that sort of answers it, but another piece of advice is throw away the app. Throw away your phone for all I care, and then try to do it. Open up those books. Get your hands dirty. That's what I do in my class, my Service Rubus class. I make those students get their hands dirty. Some of those people have never cracked open a book. They don't know how to crack open a book anymore. That's the situation we are in now. I'm telling you. So throw away the phone. That's all. Anyway. Okay. Okay. So Danilo is Serbian, so he's conservative. So he's going to try to get my goat. He's trying to ask some conservative, strangeoid questions. Right. Here you go. Listen to this. How do you understand 1 Timothy 3:12? Let deacons be the husbands of one wife. Oh, I like that. What's wrong with that? What do you want? Polygamy. Anyway, some in the Antiochian jurisdiction understand this does not prohibit bigamy. What? What do you think, and what do you think the bishops think? So I'm trying to understand the question. It's very clear to me that just like the bishop is supposed to be the husband of one wife, so is everyone else. So the clergy are always supposed to be the standard. The standard for Christianity is obviously to have one wife. In other words, the upholding the sanctity of marriage, okay? Monogamy, okay? Because that's, the Bible begins and ends with monogamy, right? That's the paradigm for God and for what's going on in salvation. It begins with Adam and Eve. It ends with the marriage of the Lamb. And the whole point of our church and our church architecture is the marriage of heaven and earth. So it's not heaven and 2 earths or 6 earths. It's heaven and earth. Okay, and it's not Adam and Eve and Mary, but Adam and Eve. Okay, so there's monogamy is the ideal. Okay, and that's why clergy, even though sometimes tragic things happen, they need to uphold that ideal of monogamy, because the people are not. And the people are not in the sense of what? Well, in Christianity, if your spouse dies, you're allowed up to 3. There's only one exception: someone who got 4. Why did he get 4? Because he was smart. That's why. Leo the Wise, he was wise in everything except his personal life. But after that, the church said, no, you're the only one. After you, it's going to be 3. Anyway, I'm being a bit facetious, but the point that I'm trying to make is that, you know, in other words, 3 wives, I mean, your wife dies, and then you're divorced, and then you get another one. You have 3 chances, as it were. Okay, but you know, I mean, that's not really the way the church looks at it. If you look at the canons, they're very, how do you say, negative about that, because always we're trying to uphold the ideal of monogamy, because marriage is forever. In other words, it's not something like, oh, until death do we part. That's why the crowns in the marriage service are held up, and if you read the prayer, it's referring to the fact that they are eternal. In other words, that you're going to give, in a sense, account for them in the kingdom forever and ever. Okay, so that's it. So you know, if you have 3 or 4 wives, you're gonna, when you're raised from the dead, they're gonna be there too. Okay, so of course everything hopefully will be forgiven and let's say transformed. But so I don't think that Mr. Danilo is talking about, you know, having 2 or 3 wives at the same time. But
Right.
clergy always would have, you know, when your spouse dies or you're divorced, you can't get married again, because they have to at least uphold this idea, which is a theological idea, and it goes, you know, very deep in, you know, scriptural symbolism, and also as an example of the people, you know, leading the people in their prayer, but also we're leading the people in our lives. So that's why, you know, it is, yeah, it's talking about what we understand as the church teaching, which means you're just allowed to have 1 wife.
May I comment on that?
Yes, please.
I didn't do well in my canon law class with the Antiochians on the St. Stephen's program on this particular topic. I was quoting Father Tom a lot in my
Tom
paper.
Hopko.
Yeah.
But he's very adamant about this. I'm
Oh yeah.
taking,
Oh yeah. Yes,
what I
yes.
said now is vintage Thomas,
Vintage
Father
Hopko.
Hopko.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, Hopko cites, he cites the point later on in Timothy about the widows getting in, and the widow has to have been the wife of 1 husband. And he cites the letter to the young widow from St. John Chrysostom about not defile. Why would you defile the marriage bed, even if your husband's gone away? But there's some in the Antiochian jurisdiction that, and there is at least 1 incident I'm aware of where there is bigamy in the priesthood. You know, Father Joe.
Yeah, so I know Father Hopko made a big deal about that, so I know the whole story. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to hear your understanding, because I've not had a chance to talk to too many other guys about this. I did talk to do you know Bishop John Bula in the Antiochian?
Well, he's married. He's a good man, because he's down to earth. He's down to earth because he understands he's not like a despot. Anyway, this is being recorded, and they're all going to fire me.
I encountered him about this, and I said to him, I said, well, is marriage to eternity? And he said, of course it is.
Of course it is. That's why he's where he is.
So we had, within the Antiochian jurisdiction, we had 2 extreme perspectives on it. And I just wanted to understand your perspective. And when you said that you taught canon law, I wanted to trigger that, because I got a pass minus on my paper. I'll show it to you someday. I think you'll get a kick out of it.
Well, I'm sure that the paper seems to be canonically very sound.
Well,
according to what you're telling
I just cited a lot of Father Tom, and he was citing, my professor was citing that stuff. You know that council in 1923. When was it? This guy wrote a book on it. You know, Father Patrick Viscuso. And when they were talking, and the service apparently brought up the notion of bigamy. Hey, you know, my wife's dead. I got children, and I got to be married again.
Yeah.
And
Okay, let me
tells the
just
whole story.
mention. Okay, I want you to mention. I want to know what that book is, because I'm very interested in Viscuso, because I'm teaching canon law and I read all this stuff. But so please cite that, number one. But number two, what I'm interested in saying is, or there is economy sometimes. In other words, in the
Sure.
patriarchate, the patriarch has, it's recent development where he understands the pastoral issues involved in, someone young that, let's say in Serbia, many of the priests, their wives died with the bombings and the wars and all that,
In World War
and they
I,
have
yeah.
tiny children. So, on a case by case basis, because our canons are never, like I said, an objective kind of like thing above our head. Christ is. Okay, so everything depends on context and the situation. But in general, we're going to go according to these guidelines, because that's why they're there. They're important because they have their venerable tradition, and there's power behind them and wisdom behind them. Okay, but again, like I said, you're always going to compare it to the gospel and the actual anthropology and the theology of our church. So having said that, basically my answer stands as what I said before. So I'm agreeing with Hopko, but also making space for some economy, because I know the reality of life is messy. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. I appreciate it.
We aim to please. Okay. Sylvester, at least he's not the Korean guy anymore. He's not C anymore. Sai. Sylvester and Nice to everyone. Father, do you have a particular favorite way to explain the flow order of the Divine Liturgy to Protestants, particularly the additions over the centuries? Well, don't tell me the Protestants have problems with additions. They were invented in the 16th century. And do you ever find any Protestant that does anything the same? Don't they have additions? What, they're going to claim that they have a pure worship service the way it was, in the early church in the time of Christ? I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? I mean, I don't understand. Additions, they're not additions. It's a living thing.
Yeah, I think that you would definitely have a core of people who would be seeking after, like as you've talked about, this is the way the early church did it, different things, and as things have changed, I think you would have a group of Protestants who would always seek to be getting as close as they could to what the early church was doing, and would then, yes, I think inconsistently reject, any later additions, but that has more to do with their concept of kind of the.
Well, for me that's heresy, because it's monophysitism, because it doesn't make any room for the human historical aspect. Okay, as if they don't have their traditions, they don't add things and change things every denomination is totally different. So it's totally, as far as I'm concerned, but also it's worshiping like a form rather than worshiping God. The earliest form, whatever they're doing, that was what? It's like a Quran coming from the sky, and that's the valid version, and everything else is bad. I mean, that's not the way human worship works ever. Okay. Well, anyway, if you want to counter them, just tell them that. What do you mean? You haven't changed things. I mean, they don't even have this kind of thing where we have stable kind of like books and traditions and canons and things like that. They don't have that. So every generation changes. Not only every generation, every denomination and every different church does it differently. They don't have one liturgy. I mean, at least that's the way I look at it. At least. Okay. Jim Keown, to everyone, can you give us a list of books deacons should have in their library? Well, I would say that already Jim Skedros has given you, and Deacon Sal has given you a good list, because all the things that you're reading, I can see that some of you guys have read, Schmemann and so on and so forth. And it seems like you have a good background. I'm assuming that you also read Diaconia by John Chrysophis. You saw him in the video. That was him, right? I don't know why they demoted him. They made him a second deacon. The other guy, he's a young guy. He was a student of mine like 3 years ago. Anyway, so list of books. I mean, there are regarding theology or regarding being a deacon. because being a deacon, it's more like what? What do you think?
Regarding the liturgy.
Regarding the liturgy, okay, it depends on how scholarly you want to get, and it depends on the purpose. Like for me, to do these kinds of classes, I have to have all the whole 9 yards. So I have like books by Robert Taft. There's a 6-volume set that it's the history of the Divine Liturgy of St. Chrysostom, and he goes over every little word and every little line and every little rubric and everything that the deacon does or the priest does and everything. In other words, throughout history, and you see obviously that yes, there is change, and that's not a bad thing. Like I said before, regarding the other question of Sylvester there with the Protestants, they need to know that not even in the early church was there like one version that it's like this idea. It's a myth that there's this pristine liturgy of Christ, and then it broke up gradually into different let's say versions. The opposite was at play. The opposite. What was going on? There was variety. Every village, because they didn't have internet, they didn't have Facebook, would do something slightly. They do the main. There was the theological vision was the same. What we're doing, the purpose, but they didn't have paper. They didn't have copy machines, and they had a schema, a shape, a vision, but everyone would do it slightly different. And so there was a great deal of variety, and eventually that variety became less. Rather than the one version becoming many, the many became a big liturgical families. In other words, the variety around Palestine ended up becoming, let's say, the Antiochian family and the Jerusalem family. Okay, and basically they're the same thing. Okay, so they ended up coagulating, what's the word, around great liturgical centers, such as the city of Jerusalem and Antioch, mainly Antioch. Antioch was much stronger than Jerusalem, okay? And then just like the Byzantine Rite was what was going on in Constantinople, and it just naturally, the places around there kind of like, gravitated towards their practice, okay? So that's the way it was. So in the beginning, there was more variety, and that variety ended up being transformed into the main liturgical families, and they're not many. In other words, there's the Antiochian family, there's the Coptic family, or the Egyptian family, okay, and there's the Byzantine family. I would almost say that it's really part of the Syrian family, okay. I mean, Antiochian means the Antiochian family is really divided into the West Syrian and the East Syrian, and Byzantine is West Syrian. So that's like all you have in the East, So it's the opposite of what those Protestants are thinking, okay? Okay. John Rigas, when you commune, the future deacon dafulas, 3 sips from the chalice or just 1? I've seen it done both ways. But what is your take on it? I think that the earlier manuscripts don't really mention 3 sips, but it's not a bad thing. It's okay. I mean, and it has become a habit, a custom. Again, there is local variety, and that is legitimate. That is okay. 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 Awesome. Where are we? Okay, we have some time. So while you are doing your questions, maybe I'll try to bring up something to show you that might be exciting to you, because you guys are really astute. You guys are awesome. So let me see if I can find it for you. But keep on writing questions if you have questions. If you don't, I have many ways to keep you busy, believe me.
Hey, Father Phil, I just wanted to say hello. I popped into the class.
Oh, wait a second. Part of the class had to be the Archdeacon of the Universe, telling us how he feels and like his how do you say, his conclusions on this year's program. And
right, I gotta say thanks to you, and I gotta say, I gotta tell them what the next class is and all that good stuff.
Tell them all that stuff. Give them your announcement. This is an opportunity.
You want me to do it now? I was gonna do it when you're towards the end. When you want me to
No, because I'm boring them and I'm putting them to sleep, so they want to hear someone else now. So wake them up. Wake them up.
I'll tell you. Well, first of all, thank you so much for all you do, and I know that this week's been crazy for you, and we try to get off the canvas, off the ground, and everything, and everybody really appreciate everybody's patience. Really appreciate everybody working together. That's what it's all about. And so yeah, so basically, thanks to Father Phil, and I might have to go. Yeah, can I find it in like 10 minutes? Okay, I will be back. I will be back. I have to go do something for my son, and but thanks guys, I'll be back. And I watched the videos. I followed along in the class this week, and I got some nice comments and wanted to see if there was any questions that I could answer too. So, all right, I'll be right back.
All righty. Okay. All right, I think I see a new question here. Let's see. Would you say that building a service from scratch is an important skill for our practical use, or more for our edification? So I might be biased because, I mean, I never use those ages and those things. I never need to. And I think that freedom is a nice freedom that you don't have to, in other words, you just walk into a church and you do the service. And also, I mean, reading the Typicon, the red book, in other words, that'll help you. That'll also give you some good pointers. But you basically already know the service, you know the structure, and you're just going to open up the books and do it. You don't have to worry about, what DD says or whatever. In other words, because he's got different versions sometimes, and that's fine because there is variety, and there's a variety of interpretations of how to do these things, I would say. So, all right, I want to find something for you that's fun. Fun. Always fun. But if you have questions, just type them up and we're going to get to them.
Wait. I want to see my instructor.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. And I want to show you some of those, the ambon that we're talking about, and other liturgical furnishings, and also what a basilica is. And I think it's important for you to know the history behind these things, because when you're serving as a deacon, let's say, you're part of something really greater than yourself. And the way the liturgy has been forged and formed, and all these rubrics, they're coming from a sort of like a different environment in a sense. In other words, they were forged in these forms that sometimes they've changed today, but the rubrics are still, or the structure of these services are still based on, the reality of these liturgical furnishings and these ideas. Okay, so let me see if I can, bring this up for you. Okay, can you all see this? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So, all right, so I love this church. It's a typical basilica. And what we have here is, look, this idea that I mentioned about the fact that the first ordination is the ordination to being a layperson. Well, these are the martyrs of Christ, and they're all going on a procession from west to east towards Christ. Okay, this is in Ravenna, Saint Apollinare Nuovo. Okay, and let's see, do I have another one? So these seem to be the women martyrs, and they have men martyrs on the other side. And the idea is that they all have these white robes of martyrdom / baptism that you read about in Revelation. So the idea is that when we are baptized in Christ, it's not just a magical thing that, our whole life we try to, to assimilate and activate, actuate that way of living, which is dying to ourselves and being raised in Christ. In other words, baptism is not a done deal. Just like marriage is not a done deal, right? In other words, you're going to say, I'm married. Yeah, but it takes 20 years, 30 years. never, and actually you never get, if you're really in love, you're never going to know your spouse. Why? Because if she is a mystery, then she's infinite, right? Otherwise, she's circumscribed. You got to figure it out. So forget it, right? It's like she becomes like, some object I could throw around, right? Okay, so that's one thing I want to show you. And the early church was, centered around basilicas. Okay, and the basilicas really, let's say, emphasize this idea of the church and what we're doing in liturgy being a movement, a linear movement, not a U-turn, round and around, round and around, round and around, like you saw in the video. That's what we do, right? All our entrances now are not really entrances anymore. They become U-turns. Okay, so originally, because of these separate buildings like the Sciphophylakeion and the fact that the people were coming from outside into the church, it was a linear movement from time to the eschaton. In other words, this idea of we're leaving time and we're really having a true foretaste of the kingdom. I think Sal is back. Sal is back. Would you like to speak now, Sal?
Yeah, sorry. The life of a deacon is not easy. And you got to roll with things as it goes, as it comes.
Well, I know that. Believe me, I know that.
So yeah, so I was saying, just like I said, I wanted to thank you guys. If you're in the class and you go to that original welcome that we had, you'll see the next classes that are coming up and everything. So I just want to make sure everybody knew what was coming up next. The next class is June 21st to June 25th, and that is going to be hospital visitations and pastoral care, and that's going to be with Dr. Phil Mamalakis, and he's taught for the Diaconate Program before. But just to remind you guys, that's what's coming up. So you got a week break, and definitely love to hear your feedback. You can email myself and Father Phil and Dr. Skedros. Like to get your feedback on the course, and also like to get your feedback. I didn't have a formal form. I was going to try to put one together, but I didn't. But if you could just give us some email feedback, good, the bad, and the ugly, whatever, it only makes us stronger. We can take it. And so if you can give us some feedback on the course, and especially towards the next block of the classes, how can we make it better for you and things like that. And we'll accommodate if we can, of course. So I wanted to do that commercial. And other than that, I really appreciate you, Father Phil, the crazy week, and you spent a lot of time and effort doing all these things. And I really enjoyed the YouTube videos. Some of them were just really fantastic. I like the ones today from that we had the Archbishop Epitophoros and the multiple deacons. And I really enjoyed that the guys could see those as well. And I'm guessing that you guys had the same thing as me, like a lot of great questions that come up from watching and studying. I did want to mention that I put a lot of additional materials on the course. Father Phil and I work really well together, and we were hoping that, we didn't even communicate a ton, he and I, but we worked together to try to get you guys material to help you. All the material that I posted is on the HCAC Diaconate Program resource library. So if any of that was very helpful to you, if that was new to you and you're like, oh, I like that, I like this, and this is great, all that stuff and hours and hours and hours more are on that resource library. So I recommend you take advantage of that. The stuff I posted are the things that I've done that Father Phil has inspired me to do, and for myself, to be a better deacon for myself, my notes and checklists and things like that. And it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress. And I did want to mention, and I want to open it up for discussion while I'm on, so Dr. Phil and I can work, Father Phil and I can work together to answer things. But, one of the biggest negatives that we hear about the program is from Vespers and Matins and liturgy, that the deacon is telling the priest, this is the way it should be. I went to the diaconate school, they taught me this, I learned that, you should do it this way. And a lot of the times, there's not that relationship that we talk about between priest and deacon, or even priest and deacon, priest and candidate. And I think it's just, if you take a big part of what you take away from this course is there's a whole lot of stuff. And there's, for every person that shows me a book to do it one way, there's probably a book to do it 5 other ways. And depending on what metropolis you're in, depending on what priest, depending on what, it's just the whole thing is just, that's the beauty of Orthodoxy and sometimes the difficulty. And if I wanted to mention to you guys as a personal note, I don't think I've ever served at liturgy or Vespers or Matins or liturgy the way I want to, the way that's really prayerful to me. I don't think I ever have, and I don't think I ever will, and I'm okay with that. You know, when I serve with Father Phil, I'll do the things the way he wants to, but I talk to him before or after liturgy. We come up with a way that we want to do things, but don't try to do things during liturgy. 3 seconds before the gospel, don't ask your priest, hey, can I do the gospel in Greek? Don't put this kind of pressure on each other. And don't try to tell him this is the way it's going to be, and especially don't do that around liturgy or before or after. Plan a time to talk to one another, to walk through these things with your priest. Even though I know that's hard, the time really is not before and after liturgy or during. Try to set a relationship time when you can bring the rubrics, bring the liturgics, and you can say, hey, what about this and this? He might say, oh, I didn't even know that. I was a deacon for 3 days. I didn't even think of that. I've never even seen that. Yeah, I heard that Father Phil mentioned that. Oh, great. Yeah, let's incorporate that. Oh, Father, would you like to do this? I really don't. And this is my reason why. And it gives him an opportunity to tell you why. And he might have a 20 or 30-minute reason. And if you try to do it before or after liturgy, he's exhausted, you're exhausted, we're getting ready. He might not be able to give you a good answer. Like Father Phil is doing. He's giving you some really in-depth good answers. So I really recommend that you realize you may never serve liturgy exactly the way you want to. A metropolitan, he may want to do it all in Greek, but he comes to a parish that does it all in English. So the metropolitan will not get to do liturgy in his heart the way he wants to. Father Phil might like to do to have the deacons raise the gifts or not, or whatever. He might like to do kero. Father Phil might like to do kero prior to the start of anything, and I might like to do kero at the kathismata, right? One of us likes it one way, one of us likes the other way. I may never get my way, right? That's okay, and that's okay. And I really wanted to make that something that was important to you guys is, as a candidate, and if you have the blessing to be ordained, know when to let go and let God. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. No matter what or how you serve, find prayerfulness in it. And if I could give you that for Vespers, Matins, and Liturgy, if I can give you that advice, that's probably the biggest advice I could give you as a deacon now of almost 12 years. And that it really means a lot. Because then when stuff happens, right? You're standing here, you're going there, they tell you to do this, somebody does that, something happens, and it's out of the muscle memory. It's out of the norm, it's out of the muscle memory. So now everybody handles that differently, right? It's so much easier to be prayerful when you realize up front, it's the work of the people, all of us together. It's not about having it your way or serving it your way or exactly the way this book said it. It's really important, and you won't find prayerfulness if you just stick your head in a book, or if you just I'm like robotic. I move here, I go there, I swing the censer, I move this, I do that. It's first deacon, second deacon, third, fourth deacon turn to do this, and It's take it away from the robotics, live the liturgy, and that's what's really important. So that was a personal thing that I wanted to mention, and just open it up to you guys, on this last course. And Father, anything you wanted to talk about while I'm on too?
Yeah. So you just reminded me of something that I wanted to tell them. And most of the rubrics say that the first deacon does the completion litany after the great entrance. And I was thinking about it. Well, how come in all these videos, especially in America, it's always the first deacon? In other words, I mean, it's the second deacon. They have the second deacon. They have the second deacon. And the question, and you know why? It's because we don't do the petitions between the the gospel and the liturgy of the faithful. So in the rubrics, the second deacon has done that, and therefore it's the turn of the first deacon. So that's an example. In other words, we see things being done differently, and we say, what's going on here? But in the end, it's all about worshiping God and Christ, and that's first. So these things are important. They're guidelines, but they're not something to lose sleep over. Or in other words, the main purpose is for us to be the body of Christ, and all the things that we tried to talk about in this class. Okay. And one of the questions I have in my final exam for teleliturgics is, it's a multiple choice. When you have a discrepancy about a practice, and there's just different choices, what do you do? Do whatever Father Philip says. That's wrong. Do whatever the Typicon says. That's wrong. Do whatever the canons say. That's wrong. The last answer is, well, do what your proestamino and your the bishop says, and that's the right answer, because it's not about being right; it's about right being. Think about it that way. In other words, and also humility. So, in other words, maybe the canon that Jim Keown was referring to, that his father was laughing about, it's referring to that kind of a thing, because sometimes we get all, how do you say, bloated up about, we're right, and sometimes the canons want to keep that down, so we're more Christ-like. So yes, indeed, all the ministries are equal and different, but sometimes we have other things in play, put it this way. Yeah. So thank you very much, Deacon Sal.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for being so on the ball with this program, and you love this program. And I see you're always on Canvas, you're always online, you're always this, you're all stressed out, making sure that everything is all perfect for these guys, because these guys are really high caliber. I'm really impressed by their writings, the answers that they gave for all the questions. They were perfect. They're better than my students at the seminary. Gee willikers. Yeah, they're great.
That's good. Well, you got Father Phil and I as like a team. Any questions for like the both of us, or as a team? I was curious if there was, Father Phil looks at it from a specific perspective when he teaches and he does his lectures. And I didn't know if you saw from the things I added and things like that. I look at everything from a diaconate perspective first, and then from a priestly and hierarchical perspective. Because that's who I am. And Father looks at it from a priest, and he teaches seminarians. So, from my perspective, the way I like to teach is new candidates and anybody, myself, the way I try to teach myself is, if you notice from my notes, I stick my hierarchical notes in my book that I'm going to use, my service book. And I always think, like, Christ is at the throne, and like the bishop's at the throne. If the bishop's at the throne, great. But if he's not, I always think Christ's at the throne when I go out to sense. And I always think of, how would I enter the church if the bishop was with me, and what would I do, and how would I take it all, and all these things. I make mention of it, to the candidates that are at our parish. And I really, if you can always think that the metropolitan is there, if you can always think that the bishop is there, and you serve that way as a deacon, it makes it so much easier to be a first deacon or a second deacon, because your mind is always thinking as if it was hierarchical. You may not do a hierarchical service for 3 years, 4 years, whatever, right? But if you always think that you're doing a hierarchical service, things just make sense. And I'll give you a specific example. When you're coming in from the great entrance, you turn, you have the discourse, and the priest comes in, and may the Lord our God remember your priesthood in his kingdom now and forever into the ages of ages. Amen. Well, if you came around the great entrance and you were the first deacon, and you had to say to the metropolitan before you handed him the discourse, and you would say, may the Lord our God remember your arch priesthood in his kingdom now and forever into the ages of ages. Amen. If you're always thinking of these things, it just makes sense. So now, okay, the bishop's not there. What do? You go in and you say that same exact thing that you were going to say. That you said it to the priest instead of the bishop, as an example.
Father Dino Estadino.
I'm sorry, what was that? Oh, I know somebody might have hopped in, but I just wanted to give you an example of just knowing, you know, no, even in your mind, okay, at the I can't even say it in Greek right now. It's Friday and I'm tired. But when it's time to go out for after the etiquette, after the small litany, and you're going to go out, and the Metropolitan's going to come off the throne, and he's going to take Keto. What, you know, think to yourself, all right, when would the royal doors have been closed? You know, when do I go out? You know, when am I going to stand by next to him? When is he going to descend the throne? You know, are there going to be altar boys that have the icons? You know, are they not? You know, and this whole block before Theonomies, right? This whole block before Theonomies is very difficult. I would say that was my kryptonite. My biggest problem was the block before Theonomies of Lord, set down your vineyard, and Lord, save the pious people, and the Femi, and all these things right around the Theonomies. What really helped me to get it in my head was when I was at the altar, and I would have my notes, and I would be like, okay, if the bishop was here, I'd be doing this, I'd be saying that, this is what would be chanted. And I kept thinking the bishop, like if the bishop was here, and then it just became simple for me. It became simple for me. So then when a bishop did show up, hey, Deacon Sal, we have a surprise guest tomorrow. The bishop's coming, right? You don't always get a chance to do, I call it bishop boot camp. You don't always get a chance to do 4 hours of bishop boot camp, right? So if you do a little bit every liturgy, if you always think like the Metropolitan is there, then if a Metropolitan shows up, you got it in your head, you know, that you can fill in those pieces, right? It's so after a while, after thinking the Metropolitan was there after so long, that part around the Theonomies, the Femies, the Lord, send down your vineyard, you know, when do I go out the royal doors? When do I not? When do the royal doors get closed and we go out for Keto, and then the royal doors get open, he comes in, he vests, all these things. It's just second nature to me, because every Sunday, every liturgy, I think of it, right? If you wait to think of the rubrics and the teleturgics, you know, when you're, when you get the surprise, the bishop's coming tomorrow, you know, it just doesn't, it's not as fruitful. It's just not as fruitful, and it's a lot less stress. It's a lot less stress. And then you can also ask questions to people like myself, Father Phil, and any of the other guys that are more senior guys, experienced guys. You can ask the little things, because when you think of it and you're trying to work through it in your head, what would I do now? What would happen here? That's when you come up with the questions. That's when you come up with the questions. So I just wanted to offer some of those thoughts too, you know, and open it back up to you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah. Any thoughts or any questions? What, you know, I'm curious. Are you guys all burnt out to death here or what?
Say, Deacon Sal, this is Danilo in Reno.
Yeah.
For the event that you're planning in New Hampshire,
Yeah.
do you have an agenda for that? Do you have any tips on how we should prepare for that?
In terms of a schedule, in terms of just preparing for that for yourself?
Well, just what are the topics? What do you want to walk away with from that weekend that you would say, geez, that was successful? I got to see Danilo from Reno and a whole bunch of other people.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
This was good because.
Great question. Great question. So if you didn't receive the flyer and the schedule, you should have. So
I got it.
So you know that I sent out a flyer and a schedule, and on the flyer is the QR codes for PayPal and Venmo that you can pay on. But to answer your question, the takeaway from New Hampshire is like I said with Father Phil and myself, Friday is going to be show up Thursday of fellowship. Friday is going to be more of the learning, teleturgics, and kind of like that special time we can share together as St. Prochorus and St. John the Evangelist spent time together. And in relationship, you know, and so everybody's going to get a chance to pair off with an experienced priest or a deacon or archdeacon, and just have some one-on-one time to ask questions, go through liturgics, and just bounce ideas and share time with each other. And then that's also, Friday is also going to be your time with God. You get a chance to spend some time on the grounds, and if you want to be prayerful, whatever, you'll have some time with God, and we'll have some fun. but it's Saturday is a little bit more of a fun day. And but we're going to talk about more about those relationships more in the morning, and then we have some fun educational. Really, I put the diaconate Greek games, the Greek diaconate games, But what we have is we have some fun things, fun exercises to do that are educational. It really should be the diaconate educational Greek games, but I want to make it a little more fun of a name. So, but we're going to have some things that we do that help you to be a better deacon, and it's not so much a competition as it is just a fun thing to kind of work through. We're going to pair off on groups of 7, and we're going to have some fun together. And then Saturday afternoon is a lamb roast, and again we'll have some fellowship, a chance to talk. The Archdeacon, as an example, Archdeacon Chris Avis might show up, and that might be his time to kind of share his ideas around the table or around our fellowship. And then Sunday we'll share liturgy together and head out the door. But you can stay in the afternoon to, again, have some time with God. So hopefully what you get away from this retreat is specific learning from an experienced person, one-on-one. Because I know, like in this class, we can't break it up first year, second year, third year guys. And it's difficult, but at the retreat and at workshops, we break it up so that you get a little more personal attention and a little bit more, experience, shared experience. And then, the fellowship and seeing each other and just being part of this brotherhood, this fellowship that's hopefully the takeaway from the retreat. Anybody else? Any other questions? Or just discussion stuff? It's up to you, Father Phil. I had so much fun. It's like I think of just so you guys know, like Saint Prochorus. He was he drew a lot he was drawn in a lot to hang out with Saint John the Evangelist, and I think he heard the stories, like Mary was hanging out with Saint John at his house, right? And so I love to think about, like, Saint John heard all these stories that Mary heard, that Mary told about Christ when he was younger and all these things. And I think, like, you hear him say, if I was to write down everything, the whole world couldn't contain all the books, right? Because I think all these stories that he heard from the Theotokos and all these things that he knew, but he spent so much time with Prochorus. I think Prochorus, the deacon, the first deacon that was with him, he drew a lot, and that's who his helper, his scribe, his deacon was with him. I think he heard a ton of these stories. And with Father Phil, I like to think of, like, if I was to tell you all the awesome things that Father Phil has given me and taught me, it's like the whole world couldn't contain all the books of all the good stuff. So I just wanted to mention that's kind of like take it in, be like Saint Prochorus, and have a good relationship with your priest, with the teachers, the faculty. That's the idea.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much, Deacon Sal.
All right. So next classes, you guys are all set. Are you closing with the prayer, Father? Are you hanging out? I'll hang out and just hang out if you keep it on going. I don't know.
I just wanted to show them one thing, because their answers were so good for this lecture. Yeah. That I want to show them, and we talked about a few things. The fact that the altar, that both the ambon and the altar were in a place that was kind of like accessible. In other words, this notion of the work of the people, and that the people were not left out. And of course, the deacons had an extremely important role, because, like I say, we've forgotten this in today's practice, that the deacons were actually like the MCs. They weren't something that would be considered as something, lower or something like that. Okay, they had a very important role. And so I just wanted to stress that and show you that here we have, this is the altar area jutting out. This is an ancient church in Philippi. Philippi is where St. Paul first preached Christianity to Europe. This is where Christianity began in Europe. okay? And we have this area is the altar area, and there would be a little like a catwalk, okay? If you look at Hagia Sophia, so let me show you. So sorry, I'm going through it quickly. So here's the diagram of Hagia Sophia. This is the Amvon, and it's got a staircase going up and a pedestal, and then another staircase going down, and then there's a pathway into the altar. So the whole thing was almost like the altar and the Amvon were kind of like an extension into the nave. In other words, it stressed the accessibility, the fact that Christ is in our midst, you know. And here's Hagia Sophia, and here's a smaller version. The practice version of Hagia Sophia was Sergius and Bacchus. So I always stress this to the students. And when the deacons are doing, you know, reading the Gospels, they can think about that this is the place where the deacons would read, okay? In other words, right in the center, and that emphasized, you know, the actual centrality of Christ, you know, in our midst. That's the real meaning of liturgy that we oftentimes forget, and sometimes other things, you know, cover over it. So let me just show you 3 more, and then we'll end, because I know you're very tired after this week. So these are some of the things that I show my students, because the architecture is important, because it reflects the way we do liturgy and the liturgy that we learned, and that the things that the deacon do today, they were forged in this environment, especially Hagia Sophia. But I want to show you something more, because we can't end the class without making fun of or, you know, teasing George Dafoulas, because he's a great guy, and he's from a village near Kalabaka, but he's never seen the Amvon then. So I have to show him the Amvon. So I'm looking for it. Here you have a lot of beautiful churches, east and west. Justinian, who built Hagia Sophia. Theodora, she saved the Byzantine Empire, you know, after the Nika revolts. Justinian wanted to chicken out. He was ready to leave, and she said, "Nope, I'm never gonna. The royal robes are the best funeral shroud. I'm not leaving." And so he regrouped, and he ended up squelching the Nika revolt, and that riot destroyed everything. Like a third of the city was burnt down, and Hagia Sophia, the second one, was burnt down. And so because of this, he built the Hagia Sophia that we know today. And in that Hagia Sophia, the rubrics that we learn about in this class, that's where they were forged. What you're doing right now, as a deacon, say, is a miniature version of what was going on in this unbelievable church. So I just wanted to show you a few Amvons, and then we're done. So here's in ancient Olympus, where the Olympian Games were, but there's some beautiful, cathedrals there. So sometimes the Amvon is to the side, sometimes it's in the middle, and the Solea is this thing like a catwalk, okay? And here again is Philippi again, where you can see the altar area jutting out, because the altar was, you know, in a semi-central position, just like the Amvon was. Okay, so that's my son Panayotis, and if you look at this, this is the pedestal. In other words, this is a staircase that would be going up, and the central part of it. So imagine how high it was, okay? And then finally, we get to see Kalabaka. So George Dafoulas can know what the treasures of what he has in his village. This is Kalabaka, and the Kimesis Church is one of the few actual Amvones that actually still exists today, okay? And it's probably from the 6th century. Some parts of it might be from the 11th century. But the thing is, look, it's closed. They don't know what to do with it, okay? We've forgotten our rubrics, okay? So that's kind of funny to me, okay? There it is again. Okay, all the churches had that. Okay, and one more thing is the synthronon that you saw in the video, and here's a beautiful synthronon, and I think that's enough. So those are the 2 basic, areas that are very important for us and for the deacon, okay?
George, now you know what to donate to the church.
Right.
George is going to have one built in Rhode Island.
All right. So I don't know if with Archdeacon of the Universe Sal's permission, I'll just finish with a prayer, unless there's anything else you want to talk about, because I'm sure you guys are tired, and especially tired because you're waiting for my video to come up, and I didn't know that YouTube takes so long to process these things. So let's just
I'll do the Thoxa. You want me to do the Thoxa?
Yeah. So I'm gonna say a prayer, and then I'm going to look at you, and you're going to do the doxa and kenin, and we'll do it that way, okay? All right. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. When the Most High came down and confounded tongues of men at Babel, he divided the nations. When he dispensed the tongues of fire, he called all to unity, and with one voice we glorify the Most High Holy Spirit. Okay, doxa. Kenin.
Doxa patrikeio ke aio pneumati, kenin ke ai Christos Ionos Toneon Amin. Ke eleison, Patri Abloison.
O Christ our God, upon fulfilling your dispensation for our sake, you ascended in glory, uniting the earthly with the heavenly. You were never separate, but remained inseparate, and cried out to those who love you, I am with you, and no one is against you. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, both now and ever, and unto the ages of ages. Through the prayers of our holy fathers, Lord Jesus Christ our God, have mercy upon us and save us. Thank you so much for being who you guys are, and the high quality that you bring to this program. God bless you. And I hope I didn't bore you too much with too many details and rubrics. Those are the kinds of things that Deacon Sal lives for. He loves those things. He sleeps, he dreams about them, you know? But anyway, you can't all be like Deacon Sal, can you? Anyway, God bless you all. Thank you so much. And I hope that Jim Skethers doesn't fire me and he keeps me on the program so I can keep on seeing you guys. God bless you.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you,
Father. Bless
All
you.
right.
I think I'm going to I'll try to send out a form to you guys. I'll try to send out a Google form. That way you guys can give some feedback, and that would be appreciated.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks,
All right.
guys.